Hello and welcome back to the One Take Show. In this episode, we are in conversation with the incredible Mr. Anirudh Rastogi. Sir is the founder and managing partner of Ikigai Law, an award-winning law firm specializing in technology law. And in this episode, we have the privilege of asking him all the questions that I've always wanted to ask him. We talk about his experience with law, we talk about his journey with law, we also talk about the journey of Ikigai Law, and we also talk about a very interesting topic, that is the choice that a law students often go through, whether to strive for generalization or a specialization. And he talks about why is it important that law students, especially the young lawyers, should strive for specialization. And more about this in this episode. So if you like this episode, make sure you like, share and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions or feedbacks, write them down in the comment section. I would love to read them. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's start the podcast.
You want something, go get it. Period.
Hello, sir. Welcome to the One Take Show. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. I, as a law student, obviously someone who is trying to understand everything that is going around us with the developments in technology law and whatnot, your journey in very specific has been extremely inspiring and something that I am personally very, very excited to talk about and learn from. So thank you so much for taking time off your busy schedule and sitting down with me for this conversation.
Sure, Kaustav. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited, and I'm sorry we've been trying to schedule this for a little bit, but here I am, and I'm glad.
Absolutely, sir. And I think I would have waited for as long as it took. To have this opportunity to speak with you in itself is very rewarding, and for every law student. And with that perspective, I think I ask you about your experience with law. I think every law student can learn a lot from just the experience of all the experts and the guests that we have on this podcast. So if you could please tell me what started you with law and what was your initial phase with the industry, with law in general?
So I think I probably became a lawyer by accident. When I was in school, I was quite curious about different career options, and maybe for that reason, at least, the good thing is I did not foreclose any. I didn't kind of take it for granted that I've got to do one thing or the other. But the idea of doing law did kind of come to me by accident. And but luckily, when I did kind of manage to get access to a prospectus for the university that I finally joined in, I was very fascinated by the sheer breadth of the breadth of the legal curriculum that you go through in a 5-year duration. That I thought was really remarkable, right? I mean, on one end, you are doing courses around, you're doing your contracts, which kind of give you an insight into business and trade. You're doing constitutional law and administrative law, which gives you a sense of what's politics and political sciences and whatnot, and then you are doing some of these exotic courses around. We had a course on water law, we had a course on space law, and honestly, in law school you didn't really dive deep in any of that. And it was, but for somebody in standard 12th who was looking at this prospectus, it seemed very fascinating, right? So I think the sheer breadth of it looked like a very liberal kind of an education, and clearly was. So I think that's what got me excited.
Yeah, and I think one of the very exciting things about, as you mentioned, that all these activities that happen in law school somehow are very contributing in their own respective capacities. But when we look at the initial part of the industry, when let's say a final year student is sort of planning their initial phases in the industry, that in itself is a journey that is very fascinating. So from your experience, what was that period like when you started with the industry?
No, I mean, it was quite interesting for me, and I think when I graduated from law school, I was quite clear in my head that I wanted to litigate, and I happened to join a law firm which not in their litigation team. The idea that I had was that maybe joining a larger organization that is kind of professionally run, as opposed to an individual counsel's chamber, would probably expose me to a lot of things which you would not get to see otherwise. And one being how is an organization kind of run on the structurally, culturally. So I think that. Um, and because I kind of went in with that idea, I think I also I had my kind of I was curious and I was looking around and I was trying to learn about all of these things as well. So that was quite interesting for me, and the organization I joined also allowed you a fair bit of responsibility early on. So that was great. So I had a good 1 year, but after that I kind of went on to do my masters. And so that was the kind of first year for me immediately after law school.
Right, sir. And I think after that, every law student or anyone who's even remotely related with law sort of is aware of your story, because we generally look up to it, because the story to Ikigai Law Firm, like today in itself, is something that we somehow look up to understand that this is an example that has been set. So obviously, like the first question about this was that what helped you arrive at Ikigai Law? I mean, inceptionally, what was your conceptual understanding, your inspiration, and why did you start that law firm?
Sure. So, I mean, a couple of different answers to it. One, that I always had a bit of an entrepreneurial itch in me, even when I was in, high school, to be honest. Except that it wasn't really a career option back then. I mean, entrepreneurship, or the word entrepreneurship, wasn't quite the buzzword that it is today. And I'm not even sure if people used to, use that word that much, to be honest. And but I always, had that kind of that inclination. And when I was in, and after my masters, I was in Singapore for about 4.5 odd years, which is where I started to again kind of get excited about doing something entrepreneurial, especially within the technology space or tech venture, right? And a friend of mine and I actually spent a fair bit of time trying to imagine a particular venture, which we were not able to really kick off the ground. But but irrespective, by the time that realization came, I was very certain that I have to be on my own now. It's time that I don't want to kind of not be doing something which is which is not entrepreneurial. So the idea I had at that time was that now I'll move back to India. And funny as it may sound, the very kind of romantic notion was that I don't know what I'm going to do, so I will spend 6 months in Goa. And incidentally, after all these many years, I finally found myself there. But at that point, it was like, well, I'll spend 6 months there, and I'll try and figure out what are the opportunities that one could build on. Not at this time, mind you, I'm not talking about doing anything within the legal space at all. I thought to myself that I'm done with the law. And I'll start maybe a tech venture of sorts and stuff. Incidentally, however, that while I arrived in India, I never made it to Goa. And in that meanwhile, I had already started talking to a friend of mine from, who was with me in law school. And we decided that, well, maybe it's an interesting time to kind of try out something entrepreneurial within the legal space, right? And a law firm which sort of is differentiating in what it tries to, the kind of work that it does, etc., and the way in which it does it would be an interesting idea. So that is how that kind of conversation began. And, I landed in Delhi, and, me and my friend, we started what was called TRA back in the day. Now, the thing was that while, while I have a fair bit of, I think I developed a fair bit of clarity over time as to what kind of a firm this would be or what kind of work we would do. But at that moment in time, it was still, to be honest, a very vague, fluid idea. There was no clarity. I mean, the whole thing around technology and startups, etc. I mean, there was a seed of, that thought was there, because as I said, I myself wanted to be doing something of my, kind of within the technology space. So I definitely had that deep interest in that space and all the entrepreneurial activity which had just begun to happen in India. Right? I mean, this is the time when we had we probably not even heard of Flipkart so much, etc. Right? So it was still a concept, and I was interested in that, but it was not very clear as to what we will be doing, how we'll build out. But yeah, so that's how it started. Until date, I always say that because the reason why, if we have been able to bring in a little bit of fresh thinking into the practice of law at Ikigai, that is because maybe I was never, as I said, I'd already decided not to be a lawyer anymore, which means I consider myself as an outsider. That, there were things that maybe I didn't enjoy about it completely, or things that did not resonate with me completely. And because I kind of came in again back into it as an outsider, I think probably that's the reason why I was able to bring in some kind of new perspective, challenge my own notions about how a law firm needs to be built out, etc. So yeah, so that was the kind of the initial journey, basically.
Fascinating. Like truly, like even today, as you said, the breath of fresh air in the legal practice in itself can be observed easily, because there are full service law firms around us, and they've been this way for ages now. And I think in the part of this conversation, we also talk about how the age of full service law firm, or the generalization in the law firms in itself, is not so prevalent anymore. But it's a very interesting question, because I'm asking this to the founder of the law firm itself, that when you look at it today, Ikigai, the kind of work that you do, how do you define it in a way that does it encapsulate everything that there is under technology law, or do you still again refine it further?
Yeah, no, that's a very important question, Costa, because so let me zoom out a little bit. So first, why are we a specialist firm and not a generalist firm? And I strongly believe that the era of the generalist firms is kind of behind us, which is not to say that the very large generalist firms won't continue to kind of remain prominent. I think they will, except that for new law firms to come in, or new service providers to come in and build out generalist practices, I believe is going to be far and few. It is a specialization, or specialized services are going to be more prominent. Now, why is that, or why is Ikigai a specialist practice? Is primarily, primarily what I just articulated, which is I think that you already have, within the legal market is not very well differentiated, right? So the firms that are there, they don't necessarily differentiate themselves on very, very clear kind of parameters, right? And I believe that given the kind of competitive landscape that you have within the legal industry, the only way for a new entrant to come in and make a mark is to be absolutely great at what they do. And they can be absolutely great at something only if it is a very kind of narrowly defined specialization, right? Now, but of course, there can be multiple specializations that you can build out. So it's not that that you will always necessarily remain a boutique, niche, small practice. You can scale, provided you choose the right niches, which niche themselves are going to evolve and become big. So therefore, niches of the future. And you can build multiple niches as well, right? So as long as you're smart about it, I think to my mind at least, it is essential, I think, to be able to kind of make your own mark within the kind of competitive landscape you have today, to be a super specialized practice. And it is not just within the law, right? I mean, you're seeing this across the board. So look at medicine, look at education. You will see that ultimately the new practices that you will see that are emerging will be more and more specialized. I think the consumer demand is also kind of moving in that direction. The typical consumer is a lot more sophisticated, is a lot more aware, and so that's the kind of belief system. And so that kind of a specialization helps us in one, being really good at what we do. It helps us in hiring right. It makes sure that our management bandwidth is focused on a few things, not just about and so all of that kind of contributes to making a solid practice, right? As opposed to which, if we were also doing banking and finance and securitization and insolvency and M&A and whatnot, I believe we would have been one of the 100 kind of practices, and the tens of practices that have opened since as well, right? So that's my belief system, and I know that there are differing views, but yeah, that's how we built out this firm.
Yeah, and I think you've sort of hinted on it a little bit already, but I think I'll ask you for further clarification. When you say that the day and age for generalist law firms is behind us, and now the specialization gives you an edge with respect to the way market is behaving, the way consumers want the sophisticated way they look at the law firms, or they want the specialization in that field. Why do you say that in a way? Like, how does that really translate into the current market situation?
Let me take an example here, right? So the typical litigating lawyer, I'm not talking about law firms because I think the litigation counsel example is a little more relatable to all of us. So the typical litigating lawyer is a generalist, right? I mean, there may be very broad distinction between a lawyer who has a criminal practice as opposed to a civil lawyer, as opposed to, say, somebody who practices a particular forum. Say some people only do Supreme Court. But beyond that, there are most lawyers will not say no to any kind of work that comes their way, except on parameters of fees, right? Now, that is not the reality is a little more kind of nuanced than that. Obviously, if the lawyer doesn't decide, sometimes the market decides for you, right? There are certain lawyers, by luck maybe, or even by design at times, say somebody has done a couple of very, very striking mining related cases. They've done them successfully, and the market begins to recognize them as lawyers who are great at mining work. And so these people start to become specialized. But in many cases, it is not by design, right? Now, so zooming out again, most litigating lawyers are generalists. And now my question to you is, for a new litigator, and this is something I used to think even when I was, as I said, out of law school, I wanted to do litigation. Even I used to wonder, when I go into practice, why will somebody ever come to me, right? Because if I have to gradually over the next 20 years, one matter after the other, build up my kind of name and expertise, and then people start to recognize you. But again, as a generalist, and at that point also there are 20 others who graduated at the same time, come to the same court, work their way up over these 20 years along with you. What's special? Why would somebody pay me a premium or hire me for that kind of standout matter, or really, or even talk in terms of value? What value will I create? Can I convince myself that I'm creating value which is distinct from the others? Is the value only that my claim is, and it really is a claim, that I'm a better lawyer? How can you even quantify that, right? And I think, therefore, the only tangible kind of distinction, at least within the litigating, amongst litigating lawyers, could really be, well, listen, I am somebody who really understands the ins and outs of, say, mining law, the mining industry, right? Every single prominent mining company in the country today wants to work with me, right? And they come to me not only for my kind of legal insight, which of course they get in the courtroom, but even outside for strategic insight, advisory, for example. Why? Because this lawyer has been, as entrenched as he or she has been in this industry over so many years. I think that kind of an aura, that kind of value creation can only happen with that specialization, right? Generalist lawyers also bring a different kind of value, I think. There's a reason why you find so many lawyers in politics, for example, right? Because I believe there's somebody I used to intern with back in the day who said to me that, and I'll say this in Hindi, लिटिगेटिंग लॉयर की जो की उंगलियां सोसाइटी की नब्ज पे होती हैं, right? So they have their hand on the pulse of the society. You've seen so many different kinds of matters, and relating to business and politics and society, and well, remember that was exactly the reason why I went to law school in the first place as well. So obviously there is some value to that kind of generalization also. But to be honest, as I said, in an overly competitive dynamic, where if people have no claim to what distinguishes them from the other, if they can't quantify their value or have a qualitative claim over what distinctive value they are creating over somebody else, then you will be one of the many hundred. Maybe you may be one of the 10 great lawyers, but well, I want to be distinct from everybody else, right? And I think that can only happen when you own a specialization like a king, right? I mean, there is nobody else who knows as much about it, and that can only happen in certain narrow niches. It cannot be that, well, I'm a great constitutional lawyer, and well, I'm yes, you had lawyers like that, but understand, even the greatest of constitutional lawyers in the country that you would swear by, kind of came in at a time, at a different era, right? When that was a specialization in itself. I mean, there were people who saw the Constitution being debated and written in front of them. And then the very first few, and the kind of all the jurisprudence over the next 20, 30, 40 years, and you saw the emergency through and all, you've seen it and you've been part of all of that. I mean, that is the kind of, exposure, experience, entrenchment into a certain thing which I think truly makes you distinct, right? And I think therefore the specializations now, which will be relevant in our future, right, 10 years from now or 20 years from now, we have to rethink them and kind of we have to understand what those specializations are going to be, and then build expertise in that area from scratch. That's what we've tried to do here at Ikigai.
Right. Fascinating. I think I've never ever thought about it like this. All the conversations that I've had previously with most of the seniors or in groups, a general narrative has been that please don't choose a specialization too early, be a generalist, and then sort of build the idea of specialization over a period of time. But what you pointed out is completely path breaking in a sense. Why would someone come to me or respect my work or would give me an opportunity unless and until I can offer them the unique value that comes with it? But so the other perspective is that doesn't this specialization comes with an opportunity cost? When an individual or let's say a law firm specializes in a particular area of law and narrows it down to a niche, the other kind of work has to be done away with. Wouldn't that be economically harmful, or maybe something that becomes an opportunity cost in the long term?
So a specialization is by definition a compromise. You have to account for the opportunity cost. So you have to be clear that the opportunity I am chasing, which is the specialization that I'm building, will come at the cost of other opportunities. The reason why people sometimes who even identify opportunities to specialize, and I know enough lawyers because I mean, I speak about, this kind of narrow focus with a fair bit of passion, and therefore I often find myself in, debates with or sometimes mentoring younger lawyers who say that, well, I want to build something like this. I see myself as a tax lawyer, for example, and I want to do indirect tax, and there too I have a certain kind of industry focus. But listen, I am not at a place where I can say no to the kind of the lease agreement which comes my way every other day. The point is that is precisely why you would never really be able to specialize, because it is only then it's a dream. But and you really, I think, to specialize, you need to kind of you need to work towards it, right? So the moment you start taking on other kinds of matters, you are then committing a chunk of your bandwidth towards executing those matters, right? All of which could actually have been otherwise devoted to building out your chosen specialization. So if you were to take a long-term view, and if you're clear that, well, you want to build out a specialization, then I think it's important to commit to it 100%, because otherwise what you will build out will be a slightly more confused practice. Now, you can strike a middle path. Many people do that. I just think that that's not the, I mean, just like I feel, and I think Ikigai would have been a very different firm had we chosen to go down that path. Like, had we chosen to say that, well, we love technology and we'll do that, all of that, but listen, why say no to the one-off kind of real estate matter or banking and finance matter? To be very honest, I know it that it wouldn't have panned out in the same way. There are so many, when you commit to something with and kind of there are literally practices we built or matters that we have taken, which we have taken at kind of knowing very well that, or sometimes even pro bono, right? Because there's a matter that we definitely want to do, because it is going to be one of those path-breaking matters within the technology space. You want your name with it, you want to experience that, but it wouldn't pay you, right? As opposed to that lease agreement, for example. But if you start to kind of dilute your focus, then that is what you will become. You will become, your value proposition will also get diluted over a period of time. So it is necessarily a compromise. I know it is hard. It's a very hard stance to say no to paying work that's coming your way. But I think that it's a necessary compromise if you want to build something, a distinctive value.
Mm-hmm. Right. And let me take your word for it. At the risk of perhaps sounding a little repetitive, but I think it is important for all the viewers watching this episode to have it very clear. You've sort of understand. You've said it that it becomes hard. It's a difficult choice to make that compromise and to settle with the specialization and to work very hard on a particular niche while you are sort of ignoring other paying opportunities that might come your way. So when a particular law student, and I know that you advise a lot of law students in various instances, if a law student who's either number one, trying to make this choice, what would be your suggestion for that law student? And number two, how can they specialize? Should they join a particular law firm? Should they join a particular senior, or should they do courses, read up on a particular subject? What are your suggestions in that realm?
So firstly, I think you shouldn't obsess over this idea just now. It's important to understand the concept. You don't have to obsess over it as a law student or even somebody in your initial years of your career. So for example, I wasn't trained to be a technology lawyer, not in law school, not in the firms that I joined initially. And I found my kind of passion because I was openly, I was looking for it, right? I mean, you need to have your eyes and ears open. You have to experiment a fair bit with different things. But if you were to say that I will decide what my specialization is going to be in law school, that may not work. Or you may start something which you 10 years later realize that maybe you're not as deeply passionate about, etc. And that's also okay. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So one fundamental thing is that I don't disagree with what all the other lawyers have spoken to who tell you that, well, generalization is valuable. I don't disagree with that, right? In fact, you should and you will benefit from a wide variety of skill set, understanding of things, experiences, etc. In fact, why even within the law? As I said, was the biggest value that I probably brought to Ikigai was that being an outsider, that I was I was probably more inspired by everything that was happening around outside of the law firm space, which I benefited from when I brought it back into the legal practice. Likewise, I mean, keep an open mind, experience, read a lot, talk to a lot of people, try different things. In fact, your internships, you're going to be ultimately joining a law firm. I would say that why do you want to spend your internships doing going to a law firm, or I mean, try different things. So that generalization is valuable, but do realize that at some point, your career will get you will benefit from a deep specialization that people can, like your clients and others within the industry, kind of relate to with you, right? If you are the person with who has the deepest kind of capability, has that kind of knowledge base about something, a hip skill, as I like to call it. So be open to that, or be aware of the fact that a specialization is something that you want to develop over a period of time. Keep looking for it, keep working towards it. For some people find it really early, right? And for example, I was very envious of this one peer of mine in law school who, for some reason, was convinced that she wants to do IP, and from year one, when IP wasn't even an offered subject, and she was at it for the next through law school and beyond, and just the sheer kind of wealth of understanding that she had on that area, the command that she had, was incredible, right? Having said that, my personality in law school, at least, I would have never enjoyed it, because I always wanted to do n number of things. So I think to each his or her own, right? If you come across something that you're deeply passionate about and reasonably good at, try and build it out from day one. But even if not, that's okay. Just be aware that ultimately at some point you want to start focusing on a certain kind of area. But to be in your early years, be a generalist, go experience things within the law and even beyond.
Right. And I think it is with this idea I would like to, as we reach the conclusion of this conversation, I would like to bring this conversation back home. And let me ask you, is this principle that you've mentioned, that you were actively looking for your passion, sort of resonates with Ikigai philosophy? And I'm really curious, why is your law firm called Ikigai? And is there a story behind that as well?
Yeah, I think somewhat what you picked on. So essentially, we used to get this question, get asked this question very often, about how is it that as a firm we have always been managed to kind of keep up with what's happening within the kind of tech and innovation space. So whether it was blockchain like 5 years ago when nobody else was talking about it, or likewise the drones industry, or our very early kind of sojourning to data privacy, when way before the idea of a personal data protection bill was floated, etc. So how did we manage to kind of get that entrenched in all of these developments, right? Which were very foundational within the tech ecosystem. And I think the answer for that, to me, was always vague, but vaguely kind of it went back to myself and to the larger group of people that we are, being deeply passionate about technology, and it's kind of that passion coming together with that sharp focus, which probably gives us some claim over kind of being good at that work as well. And what is Ikigai as well, right? I mean, the more kind of elaborate explanation of Ikigai is best explained, I think, with the 4 circles that you might have seen, which is a circle that represents what you're very passionate about, another circle which asks what are you really good at, the third which asks you what does the world need, and fourth, what does the world value? Is the world willing to pay you for it, right? Because you may be passionate about something and great at it, but the world doesn't really value it. Then is there a point? Is a question worth asking. I mean, not that different people will look at it differently, but the intersection of those 4, if it comes together, is a powerful force, right? And I think even before we'd known of, or I'd known of, this term called Ikigai, at least that was very broadly a way of thinking about, and kind of that's what kind of kept us, brought us firstly very early on to this tech and innovation space, and then kept us going in that, and not getting distracted with all the other opportunities that kept coming our way, right? Because as you grow as a firm, all kinds of opportunities will present themselves, right? So some friend will also send you their real estate client to you saying that, well, here's a good lawyer I know, why don't you work with them? And you have to say no to that, right? So I think that kind of sharp focus was very well defined by this philosophy of Ikigai, and hence the name.
I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. I sort of had the impression, but this level of analysis, this level of acceptance, and the thought that has gone behind not just the law firm, but everyone who's associated with it, I think justifies all the accolades that Ikigai recently has been receiving. It was also termed as one of the best law firms in Asia by, I'll just read out because I don't want to mistake this one, Asian Legal Business. And I'm really curious as a law firm.
Right, sorry, go on, please.
No, please do feel free to correct me. I would
No,
love to learn more about
it. So the Asian Legal Business, which is a Pan-Asian kind of magazine that gives out these awards, and so we were the kind of boutique law firm of the year for 2 years, and then also one of the best law firms to work in Asia, where there were 5 or 6 firms that were kind of nominated. So so that was the accolade I think you're referring to.
Yes, absolutely. And my question is, what is it that a law firm has to do to be rewarded like this, to be recognized like this? What is it that you've brewed up as a culture around your law firm that gets recognized at such level?
There are a couple of things which, I mean, I can't, I wouldn't claim to be able to step into the minds of the jury. But we often receive feedback from the jury as well, right? I mean, sometimes formally and sometimes informally, when people, after you've been awarded, you kind of, and one of those award functions, you happen to meet some jury member over drinks, and they would tell you what they liked or not, etc. So a couple of things that, I mean, one is the kind of the law firm of the year or the boutique law firm of the year awards, which we've now over the last 2-3 years got a couple of them from different organizations in the is something to be proud of. Yes, because we are a very, very young firm, and typically we are always pitted against firms that are several decades older, if not more, than we are. I think what really stands out is our effort at trying to challenge the convention or challenge the kind of set ideas about how a legal practice should be built. And we are very ambitious when it comes to that, right? So in terms of the sheer focus on the kind of work we will do, the kind of HR practices that we will have. For example, just recently we announced opening up our equity not only to partners but also to people who'd stayed long enough within the firm, or for example having kind of leave policies where with the flexibility of you don't have to ask for a sick leave or X leave or Y leave. You just tell people you're on leave, and that's the thing. So I mean, point being that there are a lot of these things that we have tried to reimagine in certain ways, whether on the work front or on the people front, on our hiring front, etc. And that I think truly resonates with a lot of people. And so that's been one. And what we want to really achieve out of this is not the award, but hopefully if we can essentially inspire other organization builders, young people who are entering the profession, that it is possible to kind of undo the way things are done typically and have been done for many years or decades or centuries, and kind of rebuild on them. I think that would be an achievement that I would personally be proud of. And the second thing is what personally, I mean, the one recognition that I hold closest to myself is, of course, the one by Asian Legal Business on, where we were named amongst the best firms to work for in Asia. And that is I think just representative of the kind of culture that we've tried to build. Because honestly, Kaustubh, you can talk about all the big things that you want to do, you want to do a certain kind of work and the specialization and whatnot, but ultimately you will be able to execute it only if you have a team that is capable of doing it and has bought into doing that, right? And that's only when you can do it at scale. And many of the things that we've so the kind of achievement at that on that specific thing, right, which is like having been able to build a team that takes pride in the kind of work that we do, really believes in it, etc. I think that is something that is typically years of work, and without any clear answer of how you build a team like that, right? So I think that's something which I and my colleagues are particularly proud of, and that's the recognition that we hold closest to our heart. But yeah, that's all I can say on that.
No, that's absolutely wonderful, sir. I think I've already told you this, and I think every law student who's either following your work or who is reading more and more about technology law, reading into blockchain, reading into cryptocurrency, is trying to understand all of these things, especially studying this niche area of technology law with the various aspects that are attached to it, has definitely looked up to Ikigai at one point or the other. I think there is incredible amount of inspiration that is being drawn from your experiences, and I think that is sort of creating a change in the legal practice, as you mentioned. And this conversation in itself is going to give out a lot of different perspectives to how law students or the fresh entrants into the industry or any other lawyer could really balance out between specialization and generalization and make an informed choice, which I think this episode clearly does. So thank you so much, sir. I think this was an amazing episode. Before we wrap this up, do you have any closing remarks for our viewers?
No, I mean, Kaustubh, I really enjoyed this conversation, and I think to your viewers, I would just say that I mean, don't be afraid of experimenting. Don't assume. Don't take anything as a given. Build your own path, I think. Yeah.
Right. Wonderful. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for taking time off. And I had a wonderful time. I hope you had a good time too.
I did. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.